At family dinner, Dad said I'd be sharing my 3-bedroom house with sister's family. You got extra rooms. I got up. You're right, I also have security cameras. Showed them video of sister. I never thought sitting down for Sunday dinner could feel like a betrayal. But the moment my father spoke, my entire world tilted, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The scent of pot roast hung heavy in the air, a comfort I usually loved, now tainted by a creeping tension. My family sat around the dining table in my parents' home, a scene I'd cherished since childhood, now poised to unravel. I was just digging into my second helping when Dad, his voice rising above the casual chatter, delivered what he clearly considered significant news. Liam, he began, setting his fork down with deliberate care. Your mother, Carol, and I have been discussing something important. Chloe and Mark are having some financial difficulties right now, and we think it's time for family to step up. Across from me, my sister Chloe kept her eyes glued to her plate. Her husband, Mark, shifted uncomfortably. Their kids, Maya and Leo, were completely oblivious, lost in their mashed potatoes, thankfully unaware of the growing unease. What kind of difficulties? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Carol jumped in before Dad could reply. They're struggling with their mortgage payments, sweetheart. You know how expensive things have gotten lately. It was a familiar refrain. That's rough, I said, genuinely meaning it. Have you guys looked into refinancing or talking to the bank about payment options? Dad waved his hand dismissively. We've come up with a better solution. You have that 3-bedroom house all to yourself. Plenty of space for Chloe's family to move in temporarily while they get back on their feet. The bite of pot roast I just swallowed suddenly felt like concrete in my stomach. I'm sorry, what? It makes perfect sense. Carol chirped, as if suggesting we all go see a movie. You have 2 spare bedrooms just sitting there empty. Maya and Leo could share one room, and Chloe and Mark would take the other. Just for a few months, until they sort things out. I put my fork down slowly, buying myself time to process the sheer audacity of what I was hearing. You want my sister's entire family to move into my house? Don't make it sound like we're asking you to donate a kidney, Chloe snapped, speaking up for the first time, her voice sharp. It's just some extra space you're not even using. Space I paid for, I pointed out. Space I've worked 60-hour weeks for the past 5 years to afford. Dad's expression hardened, that familiar look from childhood that meant his mind was made up and obedience was expected. Family helps family, son. Your sister needs support right now, and you're in a position to provide it. Have you actually asked me if I'm willing to do this? My voice came out calmer than I felt. Or was this decision made without any input from the person who actually owns the house? We're asking now, Mark chimed in, a mix of desperation and entitlement in his tone. We're family. You can't just turn your back on us. The presumption in his words made my jaw tighten. I'd bought my house 3 years ago after saving relentlessly, sacrificing vacations, new cars, and countless other things my peers took for granted. Every mortgage payment came from my work as a software engineer, every utility bill paid with money I'd earned. The idea that my family had gathered here tonight with this already decided felt like a violation. I need to think about this, I said carefully. What's there to think about? Chloe's voice rose. We're desperate here, Liam. We might lose our house. Do you want your niece and nephew on the street? That's not fair, and you know it, I replied. There are other options besides moving into my house. Like what? She demanded. We've tried everything. Our savings are gone. We're barely making minimum payments on our credit cards. Carol and Dad don't have room for all 4 of us. Carol nodded vigorously. Our condo only has 1 guest room. It wouldn't work logistically. But somehow my house was the perfect solution. I looked around the table, seeing the expectation in their faces. Did any of you consider that maybe I value my privacy? That I bought my own place specifically to have my own space? This is temporary, Dad insisted. 6 months, maybe a year at most. Surely, you can sacrifice a little comfort for your sister's family. The way he said sacrifice made it clear he viewed my reluctance as selfishness. I'd seen this pattern before. Chloe's needs always seemed to take priority. I was expected to be understanding and accommodating, while she got to be the one requiring accommodation. I need some air. I stood up, my napkin falling onto my plate. This is a lot to spring on someone during Sunday dinner. Don't be dramatic, Carol said. But I was already walking toward the front door. Outside on my parents' porch, I pulled out my phone and opened the security camera app I'd installed 6 months earlier. I'd put in the system after a string of break-ins in my neighborhood, never imagining it would serve a more personal purpose. Something had been nagging at me for weeks. Small things out of place when I came home from work. A window I remembered locking, unlatched. Kitchen cabinets left slightly open. My coffee maker in a different position. I'd chalked it up to imagination or forgetfulness. But now, a cold suspicion was forming. I scrolled back through the footage, 3 weeks to a Tuesday when I'd been at the office for a 12-hour shift. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. The camera mounted in my living room captured everything in clear, high definition. The front door opened. Chloe walked in, using a key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. She moved through my living room with the confidence of someone who belonged there, Mark following close behind. They weren't alone. A woman I didn't recognize carried a measuring tape, and a man in khakis held a clipboard. As you can see, plenty of space, Chloe was saying to the strangers. The master bedroom is mine and Mark's, obviously. We'll put the kids in the second bedroom, and we can convert the third one into Mark's home office. My hand clenched around my phone. I kept watching. The woman with the measuring tape was examining my walls, my furniture, my personal space with the clinical eye of someone planning renovations. We'll need to repaint, she said. These colors won't work with your aesthetic. Completely understand, Chloe replied. Liam has no sense of interior design anyway. We'll basically be doing him a favor by updating this place. Mark laughed. Yeah, bachelor pad central. Once we move in, we'll make this place actually look like a home. The man with the clipboard was taking notes. And you're certain the current resident is agreeable to these changes? My brother? Chloe waved her hand dismissively. He'll do what the family tells him to do. He always does. We just got to frame it right at dinner this weekend. Make it seem like his idea to be generous. The woman nodded, making more notes. I can have the painters here next week. We should probably also discuss the furniture situation. Most of what's here isn't going to work with your family's needs. Don't worry about that, Mark said. We'll have it hauled away once we're moved in. Liam can put it in storage or whatever. He won't need it anyway since he'll basically just have his bedroom. They spent another 40 minutes walking through my house, discussing paint colors and furniture arrangements and which of my possessions would need to be removed to make room for their belongings. Chloe opened my closets, examined my bathroom, and even checked the water pressure in my shower, commenting that they'd need to upgrade the fixtures. The footage showed them leaving around 4:30 p.m. The woman promising to email Chloe some paint samples and furniture catalogs. My sister locked the door behind them like she already owned the place. I found more footage from other days. Chloe coming by during my work hours, sometimes alone, sometimes with Mark or the kids. She'd been using my house like it was already hers. Letting Maya and Leo play in what she'd already designated as their room, testing out my kitchen appliances, even rearranging some of my cabinets to see how she might organize them differently. There was footage from just 2 days ago. Chloe sitting on my couch with her phone, talking to someone I couldn't see. No, he doesn't suspect anything, she was saying. We're breaking it to him at dinner on Sunday. Carol and Dad are on board with the whole thing. Liam will cave once he realizes the whole family expects him to step up. The front door of my parents' house opened behind me. Dad stepped out, closing it firmly. That was rude, walking out like that in the middle of dinner. Was it ruder than planning to move Chloe's family into my house without my knowledge or consent? I turned to face him, my phone still in my hand. "We're asking you now," he said, but there was no question in his voice. "Your sister needs help. This is what family does." "Funny thing about family," I said slowly. "You'd think they'd respect boundaries. You'd think they wouldn't go behind your back." His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Come back inside," I said. "I have something to show everyone." The dining room fell silent when I walked back in, Dad following behind me. Carol looked hopeful, clearly thinking I'd come around. Chloe's expression was harder to read, something between anticipation and weariness. "You're right," I said, addressing the whole table. "I do have extra rooms. You know what else I have? Security cameras." The color drained from Chloe's face. Mark's fork clattered against his plate. "Cameras?" Carol asked. "What do cameras have to do with anything?" I pulled up my phone and connected it to my parents' smart TV, something I'd helped them set up last Christmas. The screen flickered to life, showing the paused footage of Chloe and her entourage in my living room. "I installed a full security system 6 months ago," I explained, pressing play. "Motion activated, cloud storage, the works. Funny what you catch on camera when you're not home." The room watched in silence as Chloe gave her tour to the interior designer and contractor. Carol's hand went to her mouth when Chloe started discussing paint colors. Dad's jaw clenched when Mark talked about hauling away my furniture. "As you can see, plenty of space," Chloe's voice came through the TV speakers. "The master bedroom is mine and Mark's, obviously." I let the footage play for several minutes, long enough for everyone to understand exactly what had been happening. Maya and Leo were mercifully absorbed in coloring books at the far end of the table, not paying attention to the adult drama unfolding. "Liam, I can explain," Chloe started, but I held up my hand. "There's more," I said, switching to the footage of her on my couch. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. We're breaking it to him at dinner on Sunday. Carol and Dad are on board with the whole thing." Carol's face had gone white. "Chloe, you said Liam had already agreed. You told us he'd offered to help, and you were working out the details." "I said no such thing," I interjected, because nobody asked me anything until tonight. Dad was staring at his daughter with something between disappointment and anger. "You lied to us. You made us think Liam was already on board with this. We were desperate." Chloe's voice cracked. "We're losing everything. And I knew Liam would say no if we just asked straight out. He's always been selfish with his money. Always worried about himself first." "Selfish?" The word came out harder than I intended. "I'm selfish because I don't want strangers coming into my house planning renovations without my knowledge. I'm selfish because I actually worked and saved to buy my own place instead of expecting someone else to solve my problems. That's not fair." Mark jumped in. "You don't understand the pressure we're under." "Then explain it," I challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're underwater on a mortgage for a house you couldn't afford, driving cars that cost more than my annual food budget, and somehow I'm the bad guy for not bailing you out." Chloe's face flushed red. "You don't know anything about our situation. I know you've been in my house at least 7 times in the last 3 weeks without permission," I said, switching through more footage on my phone. "I know you've been treating my home like it's already yours. I know you've been planning to redecorate, throw out my furniture, and basically colonize my space while telling everyone I'm being selfish for having any hesitation." Carol found her voice, though it shook. "Chloe, is this true? All of it?" My sister's expression hardened into something ugly. "So what if I walked through his house a few times? I have a key." He gave it to me for emergencies. Emergencies? I repeated. Breaking and entering to stage your future home isn't an emergency. It's trespassing. Trespassing? She laughed bitterly. You're really going to play the legal card with your own sister? You're really going to play the victim card after lying to our parents and violating my privacy? I shot back. Dad's voice cut through the rising tension. Both of you, calm down. He turned to Chloe, his disappointment evident. You told us Liam had volunteered to help. You made us believe this was already settled, that tonight was just about working out the logistics. Because I knew this is what would happen. Chloe gestured at me wildly. I knew he'd make excuses, talk about his precious privacy and his hard work and everything he sacrificed. Meanwhile, my kids might end up homeless. Whose fault is that? The question came out before I could stop it. Who bought a house at the top of your budget when I told you to look at something more affordable? Who insisted on private school for the kids when public school would have saved you thousands? Who just had to have two brand new cars instead of buying used? Don't you dare judge our choices. Mark snarled. You don't have kids. You don't understand the expenses. I understand math, I replied. I understand living within your means. I understand not expecting other people to fund your lifestyle. Carol's voice was pleading now. Liam, they're still family. Despite everything, they need help. Then help them, I said simply. Take out a loan. Co-sign their mortgage. Let them sell one of their cars and use your minivan. There are a dozen ways to help that don't involve handing over my house. We don't have the resources you do, Dad said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. Because you already gave Chloe and Mark the down payment for their house, I reminded him. $50,000 that you told me was their wedding gift, but was really a bailout because they'd overspent on the wedding itself. Chloe's eyes flashed with anger. You've always been jealous about that. Not jealous, I corrected. Just tired of being treated like the family ATM while you get to play the struggling victim who deserves everyone's sympathy and support. The footage on the TV had moved to another clip, this one showing Chloe and her interior designer friend discussing window treatments. The casual way she talked about my house and my living room while standing in my actual living room made my blood boil all over again. Carol turned off the TV with a trembling hand. I think we all need to take a breath and approach this rationally. Here's rational, I said. Chloe and Mark have been planning to take over my house for weeks, possibly longer. They've been lying to you about my involvement. They violated my privacy and my trust. And tonight, you all ambushed me at family dinner with an expectation that I just roll over and accept it because that's what family does. What do you want us to say? Sorry? Chloe demanded. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was desperate enough to try to secure a future for my children. I'm sorry I thought my brother might actually care about his own family. Using my house without permission isn't caring about family, I said quietly. It's using family. There's a difference. Mark stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Come on, Chloe. We don't need to sit here and be lectured by someone who's never had real responsibilities. Sit down. Dad's voice cracked like a whip. Nobody's leaving until we settle this. What's to settle? I asked. I'm not asking Chloe and Mark to find their own solution to their problems. I'm not it. So, you're just going to abandon your sister? Carol's eyes were bright with tears. Let her lose everything because you can't bear to share your space for a few months? I'm going to maintain my boundaries, I said. Which I should have done more firmly years ago. Every time Chloe has a crisis, it becomes everyone else's emergency. When she overspent on her wedding, you guys covered it. When she bought a house she couldn't afford, you came up with a down payment. When their cars broke down, I was the one who paid for the repairs. At what point does she face the actual consequences of her choices? Those aren't choices. Those are circumstances, Chloe protested. Life happens, Liam. Not all of us get to coast through with six-figure tech jobs and no responsibilities. I didn't coast, I said, my patience finally breaking. I worked through college to avoid debt. I lived in a studio apartment with 3 roommates for 4 years after graduation to save money. I drove a beat-up Honda Civic that I fixed myself when it broke down. I made sacrifices and choices that put me in a position to buy my house, and I'm not going to apologize for that. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Maya looked up from her coloring book, sensing the tension. "Mommy, why is everyone yelling?" Chloe's face softened when she looked at her daughter. "It's okay, sweetie. The adults are just talking." "Some talking," Leo muttered, old enough to understand more than his parents probably realized. Dad cleared his throat. "Liam, I understand you're upset about the deception. You have a right to be. But, setting that aside, your sister genuinely needs help. Can you at least consider some kind of arrangement? An arrangement where I maintain control of my own house?" I asked. "Where I'm not suddenly living with 4 additional people in a space I specifically bought for myself? Where my belongings don't get hauled away to make room for someone else's aesthetic preferences?" "We can negotiate terms," Carol suggested hopefully. "Clear boundaries, a specific timeline, maybe some financial contribution from Chloe and Mark once they're back on their feet." "The answer is no," I said firmly. "Not because I don't love my sister or care about my niece and nephew. But because what you're asking isn't reasonable, and the way you went about asking has destroyed what trust one had left." Chloe's expression cycled through several emotions before landing on cold fury. "Fine. When we lose our house and my kids are traumatized by having to change schools and leave their friends, I hope you can live with yourself." "I'll manage," I said, though her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. "Somehow I think you'll manage too. People in actual crisis don't have time to hire interior designers and plan renovations. They downsize. They make hard choices. They do whatever it takes to keep their family housed and fed." "How dare you," Mark started. But Chloe put a hand on his arm. "Let's go," she said coldly. "Clearly, we're not welcome here anymore." "Chloe, wait," Carol called. But my sister was already gathering Maya and Leo, collecting their coloring books and tablets. Dad looked at me with something like disappointment. "You're making a mistake, son. Family is supposed to stick together. Family is supposed to respect each other," I countered. "Trust each other, not lie and scheme and manipulate to get what they want." The front door slammed behind Chloe and her family, hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. Carol burst into tears, and Dad's expression could have frozen water. "I hope you're proud of yourself," he said quietly. "You've just driven your sister away over some hurt feelings." "Over my home being treated like community property," I corrected. "Over being lied to and manipulated. Over being expected to sacrifice my life and comfort because Chloe refuses to make hard choices." Carol was sobbing into her napkin. "Now she's your sister. Your only sister. What if you never speak again? What if the kids grow up resenting you?" The guilt washed over me, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to cave, to call them back and say we'd figure something out. But I thought about that footage, about Chloe's casual dismissal of my belongings and my space, about the weeks of planning she'd done behind my back. "Then they'll have to resent me," I said, though the words felt like glass in my throat. "I'm not going to light myself on fire to keep someone else warm. Not anymore." I left my parents' house shortly after, the pot roast sitting cold and congealed on plates. No one was hungry enough to finish. My phone buzzed constantly on the drive home with messages from various relatives who'd apparently heard about the dinner disaster. Most took Chloe's side, painting me as the heartless bachelor with more space than compassion. A few, including my cousin Ethan and my aunt Sarah, sent supportive messages, acknowledging that what Chloe had done was wrong. Walking into my house felt different now, knowing how many times Chloe had been there without my knowledge. I went through every room with fresh eyes, noticing small things I'd missed before: a brochure for paint colors tucked behind my couch cushion, measurements penciled faintly on the doorframe of the second bedroom, a business card for a furniture liquidation company stuck in my junk drawer. I changed all my locks that night. The locksmith arrived at 9 o'clock and had new keys cut by 10. I also called the security company and upgraded my system, adding more cameras and setting up instant alerts for any motion detection when I wasn't home. The backlash from my extended family came fast and fierce. My phone exploded with messages, ranging from concerned to accusatory. Uncle David called me selfish and short-sighted. Aunt Brenda said I was punishing my innocent niece and nephew for their parents' mistakes. Cousin Amy suggested I was having some kind of breakdown and needed therapy to work through my issues with family. Only a handful understood my position. Ethan sent a long text about how he'd watched Chloe manipulate family situations for years. Aunt Sarah shared a story about lending Chloe money that never got repaid. My friend Daniel from college offered to come stay with me if I needed someone in my corner. The weeks that followed were some of the strangest of my life. I blocked Chloe and Mark's numbers after the 20th angry voicemail. Carol called daily, alternating between tears and lectures. Dad sent terse texts about disappointment in family values. The silence from my sister somehow felt louder than any of the noise. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into a major project upgrade, staying late and volunteering for weekend shifts. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I deflected their concerns with vague comments about family stress. Only my manager, Olivia, knew the full story, and she was firmly in my corner. "You did the right thing," she told me over coffee one morning. "Boundaries exist for a reason. You don't owe anyone access to your home just because you share DNA." "Then why does it feel so terrible?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "Because you're a good person who loves his family. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you." About a month after the dinner disaster, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Mark. "I need you to know something," he said without preamble. "We lost the house. We're moving in with Chloe's friend, Jessica. The kids are devastated. I hope you can live with that." Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat staring at my phone, feeling the weight of his words settle over me like a heavy blanket. Part of me wanted to call back, to offer some kind of help or support. But I remembered the footage, remembered their plans to take over my space, remembered the lies and manipulation. I didn't call back. More weeks passed. Spring turned to early summer. My garden bloomed with the tomatoes and peppers I planted. I renovated the second bedroom into a proper home office, installing custom shelving and a standing desk. The third bedroom became a combination guest room and hobby space for the woodworking I'd been wanting to learn. Then something unexpected happened. I received an email from Jessica, Chloe's friend who'd taken them in. The subject line read, "You should know the truth." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. "Liam, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone connected to Chloe right now, but there are things you need to know. I've been friends with your sister for 8 years, and I've watched this pattern play out before. You're not the first person she's tried to manipulate." The email went on for several paragraphs, detailing incidents I'd never known about. Chloe had borrowed money from Jessica 2 years ago, promising to repay it within months. The debt still existed, now ballooned to over $8,000 with excuse after excuse about why repayment kept getting delayed. There were other friends who'd been burned, small business owners who'd provided services expecting payment that never materialized. Even Mark's own brother, who'd co-signed a loan and ended up covering the payments himself. "She told everyone you'd already agreed to let them move in," Jessica wrote. She showed me paint samples for your house weeks before the dinner. When I asked if you knew about the plans, she laughed and said, "You do whatever the family pressured you into doing." I should have said something then, but I didn't want to cause drama. The email ended with an apology and an admission that having Chloe's family staying with her had been a nightmare. They'd taken over her entire house, made no effort to contribute to groceries or utilities, and Mark had actually damaged her car by driving it recklessly and refusing to pay for repairs. "I'm giving them until the end of the month to find somewhere else," Jessica concluded. I wanted to help, but they're not looking for help. They're looking for someone to solve all their problems while they continue making terrible choices. You were right to protect your boundaries. I wish I'd done the same. Her email shifted something in my perspective. The guilt I'd been carrying started to feel less like a moral failing and more like a conditioned response to years of family dynamics that had trained me to always be the accommodating one. 2 days after Jessica's email, I got a call from my Aunt Sarah. She and I had always gotten along well, partly because she lived 3 states away and wasn't caught up in the daily drama of family politics. "I've been hearing things," she said without preamble. "Your mother's version of events is very different from what I suspect actually happened." I found myself telling her everything, including details about the security footage that I hadn't shared with anyone outside my immediate family. Sarah listened without interrupting, asking clarifying questions only when necessary. "Your mother has always babied Chloe," she said finally. "After your grandfather died, Carol threw herself into being the perfect mother, but somehow that only extended to your sister. You were expected to be independent and self-sufficient from a young age." "I never really thought about it that way," I admitted. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course you didn't. That's how these patterns work. You were praised for being responsible and not needing help, so you learned to never ask for it. Chloe was coddled and rescued, so she learned that someone would always bail her out. Now everyone's confused why you won't play your assigned role." Her words resonated in a way that made my chest tight. "So, what do I do?" "Keep doing what you're doing," she said firmly. "Maintain your boundaries. Stop apologizing for having them. And maybe consider that the family members giving you the hardest time are the ones most invested in maintaining the dysfunctional system." After hanging up with Sarah, I spent the evening going through old family photos on my computer. There was a pattern I'd never noticed before, visible once you knew to look for it. Birthday parties where Chloe got elaborate celebrations while mine were quiet family dinners. Graduations where her achievements were framed and displayed while mine warranted a congratulatory card. Even the Christmas photo showed a disparity in gift volume and expense. I wasn't looking for reasons to be angry or resentful. The past was what it was. But understanding the pattern helped explain why this current situation had felt so particularly violating. It wasn't just about the house. It was about a lifetime of being expected to accommodate, to understand, to sacrifice my needs for someone who'd never been taught to consider anyone else's. The next morning brought another surprise. My doorbell rang at 7:30, and I opened it to find my father standing on my porch. He looked older than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside wordlessly, leading him into the living room that Chloe had wanted to repaint. He sat heavily in my armchair, the same one Mark had planned to have hauled away. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said. "She'd be furious if she found out." I waited, not willing to make this easier for him. Dad rubbed his face with both hands. "I watched those videos again, the ones you showed us at dinner. Really watched them this time, without your mother talking over everything and Chloe crying." "And?" I prompted when he fell silent. "You were right," he said quietly, "about all of it. The lying, the manipulation, the entitlement. I didn't want to see it because seeing it would mean admitting we failed somewhere as parents." The admission hung in the air between us. I'd imagined this conversation dozens of times over the past weeks, but now that it was happening, I didn't feel the vindication I'd expected. Chloe called last night, Dad continued. She wanted money. Not for rent or food, but for Maya's birthday party. She wanted to rent out a venue, hire a princess entertainer, the whole elaborate production. When I said no, she told me I was choosing you over my grandchildren. That's not fair, I said automatically. No, it's not, he agreed. But fair stopped being part of this equation a long time ago. Your mother and I have given Chloe over $120,000 in the past decade. Down payments, car repairs, credit card debt, medical bills that insurance should have covered if they'd done the paperwork. Every time we said it was the last time, and every time another crisis would emerge. I'd known about some of the money, but hearing the total made me physically flinch. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that you weren't wrong, Dad said, meeting my eyes directly. You weren't selfish or cruel or any of the things your mother accused you of being. You did what we should have done years ago and stopped enabling behavior that was never going to change on its own. So, what happens now? I asked. He sighed deeply. I don't know. Your mother isn't ready to hear any of this. She sees Chloe as a victim of circumstances rather than a creator of her own problems. The cognitive dissonance would be too much for her to handle right now. And you? I pressed. What do you see? I see a son who worked hard and made smart choices and bought himself a home he's proud of, Dad said. And I see the family trying to punish him for not sacrificing that to fix problems he didn't create. I see that, and I'm ashamed it took me this long to say it out loud. We talked for another hour, covering years of family dynamics and patterns neither of us had wanted to examine too closely. He told me about arguments with Carol over how they handled Chloe, about his growing suspicions that the financial crises were more about poor choices than bad luck, about the guilt he felt for not protecting me better from the expectation that I'd always be the solution to everyone else's problems. I can't fix this, he admitted as he was leaving. Your mother and I are probably going to fight about this for months. Chloe will keep creating drama. The family gossip isn't going to stop, but I wanted you to know that at least one person sees the truth of what happened. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing the conversation. His validation mattered more than I'd realized it would. The guilt was still there, but it felt less crushing now, more like something I could carry without being consumed by it. The weeks continued to roll forward, bringing warmer weather and longer days. My garden bloomed with the tomatoes and peppers I planted earlier in the season. I threw myself into home projects, renovating the second bedroom into a proper home office with custom shelving and a standing desk. The third bedroom became a combination guest room and hobby space for the woodworking I'd been wanting to learn. Carol stopped calling daily, though she still sent occasional texts asking if I'd reconsidered. Dad and I had one stiff, formal phone call about a family legal matter regarding my late grandmother's estate. Chloe remained silent, a void where my sister used to be. The guilt never fully went away, but it became something I could live with. I thought about Maya and Leo sometimes, wondering how they were adjusting to their new situation. I hoped Jessica was a good friend, that the kids were resilient, that somehow things would work out for them. But I also knew I'd made the right choice. My home remained mine, my space unviolated, my boundaries intact. The security footage still existed on my cloud storage, a reminder of why those boundaries mattered. Sometimes family means sacrifice, but it should never mean erasure. I stood in my living room one evening in early June, looking at the furniture Chloe had wanted to haul away, the paint colors she'd wanted to change, the space she'd already claimed as hers in her mind. My home felt truly mine for the first time in months. No longer tainted by the knowledge of secret visits and planning sessions. The loneliness was real. The family fracture painful. But so was the peace of knowing that my space, my sanctuary, remained under my control. Some prices are worth paying, even when they cost you the people you love. Especially when those people never really saw you as anything more than a convenient solution to their problems. My phone buzzed with another message from Cousin Amy. Another lecture about forgiveness and moving forward. I deleted it without reading past the first line. Some relationships require distance to survive, and some boundaries are worth defending no matter who it costs you. In the end, I kept my house, lost my sister, and learned the hard difference between helping family and being consumed by them. What would you have done?